And White House correspondent Kevin Corke, live in Honolulu. Lucky guy there. Kevin, you asked the White House, why not let the incoming Trump administration deal with the Russians? Good question. Did they have a good answer?
Well, I thought the answer was sort of what I expected, which is, listen, Kevin, the clock's not at zero, it's still running, and we're going to run all the way through the tape, right? That's sort of boilerplate stuff in terms of political speak inside Washington. But I must say this, they did have an opportunity to sort of weigh whether or not they wanted to do something now or simply leave it. But they felt like, given what happened in the run-up to the 2016 election, they wanted to make something happen and make the Russians pay. Now, we have been talking at length, frankly, Heather, over the last 24 hours about what the Russians might do in retaliation. But we do know, at least from this perspective, the president has already ordered that a couple of facilities be shuttered, including one in New York and one in the state of Maryland, making sure that that was part and parcel to this sort of retaliation for what was perceived as cyber intrusion in the lead-up to the 2016 election. Now, I want to share just part of what the president has been saying about this. Of course, the Russian operatives, nearly 36 of them, have now less than 72 hours to leave the country. The president saying in his statement, these actions are not the sum total of our response to Russia's aggressive activities. We will continue to take a variety of actions at a time and place of our choosing, some of which will not be publicized. And that's an important aspect of all this, Heather, because keep in mind the cyber response is probably where the majority of the meat will be. The White House, of course, placing the blame on Vladimir Putin for the supposed hacking of the DNC emails, including the Clinton campaign chair, John Podesta. And Eric Schultz says that's why they chose to act now.
What Russia has been engaged in over the last few months and years is unacceptable. It's outside the norms of diplomatic behavior, and the president is sending a message today to tell them to cut it out. If the next administration wants to lift sanctions against senior Russian intelligence units to make it easier for them to interfere in our elections, you can go ahead and do that. We just don't think that makes much sense.
So there you go. Cut it out, knock it off, and that's why they're making the decisions they're making right now, Heather.
So any indication of what the Russians will do to react to these moves by the Obama administration?
You know, it's interesting. I've been covering politics for a long time and very obviously well aware of what the Russians generally do in situations like this. They react very quickly, right? And yesterday you saw closing schools down, making declarative statements. But very interesting today, Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, seems to be taking sort of a wait-and-see attitude, figuring he'll wait until the Trump administration takes over in a few weeks to see exactly how they might respond. Let me share part of his statement as they continue to sort of unpack what the White House has done and what their response may in fact be. Again, this is from Vladimir Putin. As it proceeds from international practice, Russia has reasons to respond in kind. Although we have the right to retaliate, we will not resort to irresponsible kitchen diplomacy, but we'll plan our further steps to restore Russian-U.S. relations based on the policies of the Trump administration. A thaw? We'll all have to wait and see. Heather, back to you.
We'll see. And opposite of what the Russian Foreign Ministry had suggested this morning, that they do, in fact, expel those diplomats from the U.S., from Russia. All right, thank you very much for joining us, Kevin.